Welcome to Sharing the Light, the Sunshine Cathedral's talk show webcast where we discuss theological, ethical, spiritual, and social issues with the cathedral's pastoral staff. Sunshine Cathedral is a metropolitan community church affiliated with the Center for Progressive Christianity. We're located in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Now, we hope you will enjoy this episode of Sharing the Light. Hello and welcome to Sharing the Light. I want to thank you for joining us today. Today we're joined by our senior pastor, the Reverend Dr. Darrell Watkins, and also our staff clergy, Reverend Michael Diaz. Today we're going to be looking at the topic of, can we follow Jesus without worshiping him? Can we follow Jesus without worshiping him? So, Pastor, how do you lead us into this discussion today? Can we follow Jesus without worshiping him?
Well, you know what? We talk about Jesus a lot on this program. It's a Christian church. He's bound to pop up with some frequency. And but what is amazing to me is because we're on YouTube and people can respond on YouTube, and we're glad for people to join the dialogue and share their thoughts and opinions. And they were good enough to listen to us banter on for 10 minutes. They we certainly could read what they have to say in response, and so that's all wonderful. But I am always sort of struck by how angry the responses are, how sort of mean-spirited and accusing. You know that one person, I think it was meant to be an insult, called us anthropologist. Well, of course, I have a very high regard for the social sciences, so I at first I was flattered, and I was like, wait a minute, I don't think they mean that in a nice way.
The degrees are not in that.
Yes, they're not real Christians; they're social scientists. And oh well, okay, whatever. But it's just, it's interesting that people somehow think that their very narrow experience or understanding of Christianity is the only way to be Christian, and that is historically not a very sophisticated view. I mean, Christianity has always been diverse. It's always consisted of many movements within a larger movement. From the very beginning, there were Jesus movements and Christ cults, which have two very different understandings of why they exist and why Jesus is important to them. What is important is that Jesus is central to their faith. But the Jesus movements, the Messianic movements, those were sort of followers of Jesus. The Christ cults, those were sort of worshipers of if not Jesus, at least the cosmic Christ represented by Jesus. And so that's been since the first century. And as I look around, people debating their Christianity and expressing their Christianity in lots of ways, it seems to me we still have followers of Jesus and Christ cults. Both are equally historic. Both are equally valid. And so it isn't, should you be one or the other? The answer is Christianity has always contained both. And so you have to answer for yourself which equally historic and valid and legitimate expression of Christianity speaks to me. And so no, my answer would be you don't have to worship Jesus to follow him. In fact, from the very beginning, have been those who saw him as a prophet, some who saw him as a healer, some who saw him as a teacher, some who saw him as sort of a cynic philosopher, some who saw him as sort of a pagan sort of sacrifice, like the virgin you toss into the volcano to keep the island safe, and some who have seen him as a unique manifestation of the divine, and others who saw him as one of many manifestations of the divine. All of those understandings and more have always been contained within the Christian tradition, and I think they still are. So it isn't can we, some of us will. The answer is, the real question is how can we get along with those who experience Christianity differently than we do? And that's what I think is important, is to understand there isn't one Christianity, there are Christianities. And if we don't have the same understanding or experience of Christianity, how can we respect the differences? Because they've always been there, and as far as I can tell, anthropologist that I am, they always will be.
Michael, can we follow Jesus without worshiping him?
People do that today. And as Reverend Watkins said, people have always done that. And it's funny, you know, when you take a church history class and you go through the debates about how divine was Jesus. You know, was he fully human and fully divine, or he just seemed to be human, or he just seemed to be divine, whatever the case may be. And so those arguments and those debates were always going on in the early church, and so why not continue those today? There are many people, Unitarians, I know a lot of them, who not just Unitarians, but Buddhists, who follow Jesus, but they do not worship him. And in some aspects, I think that is even better, because the sad part of many Christians is whenever there's an ideal person or ideal situation, or someone who has just exudes these values that we would like, what do? We put them on a painting on the wall, and we worship that painting instead of actually following that painting. I mean, you think of
Idolatry.
Absolutely. When you think of Martin Luther King Jr., you know, when his movement was more than just more than about racism. It was a poor people's movement. Workers' rights,
peace.
social justice, peace, anti-war, and yet many people today just think of him as being against racism and for full citizenship for African Americans. Well, it's not all that. We forgot about that. But because we've put these people on a wall, and we do the same to Jesus, we forget about the social justice aspects. We forget about the humanist that he was, and treating people with dignity and respect. And so I think in some ways it is better. But as long as we can see the good in following Jesus and some of the good in worshiping Jesus, and as Darrell said, really being able to interact with one another in a positive manner.
What is it that trips people up about this question, though? I mean, what is it the very nature of, in order to be a follower of Jesus, I have to follow Jesus, I have to do the teachings, I have to do all of this stuff. What is it that trips people up about this particular?
I think Christianity and maybe Islam. I think those two traditions have made a mistake that other traditions have avoided. In Buddhism, certainly your school of Buddhism you think is probably the most appropriate or the most historic or the best, but you don't doubt that other Buddhists are Buddhist, and you don't doubt that other religions have validity. And the same thing with Hinduism. You may think that the deity that represents the ultimate in your household is the best sort of deity for that, but you don't discount the other deities, and you don't discount that other traditions have something to offer the world. And but in Christianity, there has arisen a myth that only a certain way of being Christian can be Christian, and only Christians can know God. And so once you have bought into that, anyone who challenges that notion, that must be very scary for you, because you have based your whole reality on us and them. We're right, they're wrong, and I'm okay because I'm in the right group. If anyone comes along to challenge that or threaten that or try to take that away from you, then your whole concept of why you're okay has been threatened. And so, of course, people sort of come out swinging because they place their sacred value on, on the winning team. And I think that's a mistake that we have made, and progressive Christians are trying desperately to correct. There's not a losing team. God is omnipresent. There's no way to get away from God. God is the ultimate and omnipresent and all-loving reality. And Christianity is how some of us explore that mystery. Other people explore it in different ways. But Christianity is how we do it, and within Christianity, we have lots of ways of doing it. But we're trying to get the message out that God is love, and that love is ubiquitous and omnipresent, and isn't going to let any of us go, no matter what our opinions are. And we have to remember that at the end of the day, religion is a set of opinions.
Mike?
I think if you look at the first century example of the Jesus movement, people follow Jesus, and because they follow Jesus, when Jesus was executed, the movement continued on because people followed him. People didn't just stick Jesus on a wall and only worship. Some people did that, but the movement still continued. And so that's what we want to do today, is continue the movement, not stick Jesus up on a wall or in a church somewhere.
Last word, Pastor?
That was a good one. I'll let that one be it.
All righty then. We want to thank you for joining us here today on Sharing the Light. Thank you for joining us for another great episode of Sharing the Light. Tell your friends about this online ministry, and when you're in Southeast Florida, make sure you worship with us on a Sunday at the 9 a.m., the 10:30 a.m., or the 6 p.m. service. And now for a final word from our senior pastor, the Reverend Dr. Darrell Watkins.
Email me at darrell@sunshinecathedral.net if you have a religious question or if you'd like to subscribe to our daily devotional magazine, Spirit and Truth. We'll send it anywhere in the United States for an annual donation of any size. You can also email us prayer requests, or you can make donations on our website, www.sunshinecathedral.org. You'll also want to check out our great performing arts series, religious education classes, conferences, and other exciting activities. For now, we wish you many blessings on your spiritual journey.